Powerful insights often occur when you least expect them. On Transformative Leadership Conversations, they're at the heart of every episode. Hi, I'm your host, Winnie De Silva, and together we're exploring a spectrum of leadership themes through the compelling stories and insights of seasoned leaders and prominent experts. And in each episode, you'll walk away with inspiration, strategies, and tools to enhance your leadership, build effective teams, and lead thriving organizations. So, this conversation today started as a deep dive into leadership insights from being a global immigrant entrepreneur, but it became so much more very quickly. Anna Gudmundson shares what it's like to build and scale businesses as an immigrant entrepreneur and how living in 6 countries, working across cultures, and navigating male dominated tech spaces shaped the kind of leader she chose to become. But what really struck me about Anna is how contemplative and insightful she is. She leads with clarity and a global lens, constantly zooming out to see herself, her company, and the world around her in context. We talk about some of the most important leadership questions leaders are facing and asking themselves right now. How do I grow a business without losing myself? How do I stay centered while leading through complexity and scale? And what values actually guide my decisions? And lastly, what does it mean to create a culture rooted in humanity, not just productivity? Anna's work as the CEO of Sensate is about calming the nervous system, but her leadership model is about something even bigger: leading with intention, presence, and purpose in an overstimulated world. Anna, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited for you to be here. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to be talking about leadership specifically as it relates to being an immigrant entrepreneur, which is what you are. But before we get into all of that stuff, I really want to hear about your company. I really want to hear about like what you do. I want to hear about Sensei. It's a really, really cool technology that you have. And I think that and this really kind of plays to what you're passionate about: technology, wellness, global impact. These things are really important to you. And it seems like it's coming together in this product that you have. So let's just start there. Talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit more about you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, it's hard to work this many hours if you're not passionate about what you do. At some stage, it's like if we have a first product in the market, it's a little hardware device that goes on the sternum. You put on your own headphones, and it emits infrasonic waves, and this is to calm the nervous system. Um, a lot of people with quite a lot of anxiety, and sleep issues. Also, people just really need a way to self-regulate the nervous system for health reasons, to also celebrities and longevity people, but like having a way to easily self-regulate the nervous system or to calm down or to relax, to fall asleep is just so important for any type of health, never mind longevity, right? So it's fascinating. I think the product is just tapping into the body's own ability to do this. Obviously, oming in yoga, is to tone the vagus nerve, and so it's mimicking some of that. And so I think it's a combination of really easy to work, easy to use, and that it really works. So then people keep using it, and the only thing that's going to have an impact is what people keep using. So it's definitely a lot of work, but it makes it worth it. We're getting letters every day from customers, and it's very heartwarming. So that certainly drives a lot of my energy.
One of the things that struck me about when we talked off mic about your product was, meditation is something that a lot of people are doing nowadays, and mindfulness and all that. And I think that there's probably a lot more people who want to do it, who don't do it, but they want to, right? And what struck me about our conversation is that the product that you have is sort of a bridge to helping people do it, because I think people don't do it either because they can't calm down enough to do it, or they don't make space. And I also feel like there's something interesting about it being physical, like it's a physical thing that you put on your body. Anyway, it just seems like it's like a trigger for you to be able to do the things that you're saying you wanna do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it that I really like about the product, and it's my co-founder Stefan Kremelik who came up with this product. He pioneered integrated healthcare in the UK, so he really worked with a lot of people that needed to be able to calm the nervous system to get well. Because when we activate the sympathetic nervous system and we activate the stress response, it's really undermining our immune system and therefore very much undermining our ability to get well. So it almost doesn't matter what disease we have, if we constantly activate the stress response, we're undermining our immune system, undermining our digestive system. So even if we're taking supplements and things like that. So it is very fundamental. And so he, in his so biggest integrated healthcare clinic at the time, they found that if there was sort of a syllable, it's a something, a common denominator to people's recovery, and they dealt with a lot of complex health conditions. It was good vagal nerve tone. So I think, and so from I've also studied the nervous system, but it's not really my background. But we need to come into our bodies, and that can be hard if we're in pain or if we're too stressed or actually even too tired. So it helps brings us back into the body because it is a somatic experience, which is the infrasonic waves. And what's infrasonic waves? It's actually natural occurrences is like cat purr,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
but it's low frequency sound waves, is obviously completely natural to the body, and so I do think that in today's world, there's so many people that aren't finding the peace to meditate, and some or mindfulness can be difficult if we are when we really need it, and when we're too stressed. So even if we can help people towards that, we endorse, we love meditation, we love mindfulness, but we also realize that a lot of people find that quite difficult, and that the product is extremely helpful for many many people, and we're selling all over the world now. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I love that analogy with the cat purring. We were a total side direction, but we were fostering kittens and one of them was sick and we had to take her to the hospital and she was purring. And when I brought her to the doctor, she said, shoot, now I can't remember what she said, but she was basically saying it's like a coping mechanism. It's like self-soothing purring. That's what she called it, self-soothing. And that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like I mean, that's, like, naturally something they do, and I guess this is, like, an external way to, like, do that kind of self-soothing purring.
Yeah, yeah, and we also I mean, like, I think, this is a very deep rabbit hole that we shouldn't fall down
Right.
into, but I think we're also like, we're really starting to understand frequency and vibration in general. Like, quantum computing is, much more looking at the waveform of reality, and so, we're really starting to understand reality in general more as waveform, and we've really mainly studied like, reality as matter, right? So there are studies on potential healing aspects of cat purr, and we talk about cats having 9 lives and whatnot. So that's a whole other rabbit hole, and there's actually very much of research in this space. We know now, for example, that ultrasound as well, which is high frequency sound, can be used for a lot of different health conditions. And so I think we're gonna see a lot more of these type of technologies, but for us, it's so crystal clear. I mean, the outcome both from our research and what we're seeing with real people, which is actually the most important part, because you can have good results in a clinic, but if it's not translating to at-home use, it has no effect whatsoever. So yeah, but again, it's a deep rabbit.
No, I love it. No, no. I mean, I really it's fun to hear the background and it's fun to hear what you're doing. I'd love to hear now a little bit about your own personal background and kind of like your story. You're from Sweden. You're here in the US now. But you've also founded businesses. Talk a little bit about some of the key milestones and highlights from your journey as an immigrant entrepreneur. You're also a woman, and some of the things that have really been formative for you in your leadership.
Yeah, it is definitely something that colors my life and the fabric of who I am. And I think, I had the opportunity to live for a short period of time, but in Africa as a child, it was a project sponsored by a part of the UN around children's culture, and and the aspect was, like, I was only 5 years old, and I got a chance to live in quite remote areas, where I was part of the village, carrying water home on my head, making cassava balls, and just playing with the local kids, and It was a completely rural, pretty much non-connected. There's no electricity, no phone, maybe one car coming once every 2 weeks, and that was someone they knew. So, it was a fantastic experience, and I think, also that has formed a lot of my understanding of we are the same. It's not an intellectual belief, and I've realized that later in life that it's different to have that intellectual belief, but to know it from experience. And so to play with those kids, we didn't speak the same language, obviously, and I picked up some words here and there, and then picked up some of mine, and we made our own language. Um, we are the same, and it doesn't matter from the outside. Obviously, their culture looks extremely different.
That's just an incredible experience. So, like, that's just amazing, and the fact that you experienced that at such a young age and in such an extremely different culture, is just it must have been so formative for you in the way that you see life. And like you said, just that and I just think that's just so important what you just said around knowing intellectually some things and knowing it and experiencing it actually for yourself. Can I just ask you really quick, like, were your parents there? Like, what was this program? Just tell me quickly. I mean, I'm curious. I'm assuming other people are wondering that too.
Course, I wasn't on my own at 5 years old. There was also a photographer there who was documenting, and so, it was incredibly safe in this village. I would and also the difference is obviously there's a lot of grown-ups in the village, so the kids are just playing. And so, yeah, my parents would be somewhere else at some time, and I would be in, like, sleeping in the hut, and, so I really and the thing is I saw myself as one of the kids, um, in the village, and so I do think that it took me a while to understand how important that experience was because, unfortunately, as we get older, and I don't know where it comes from because there are 2 ways to react to difference, with curiosity or with fear. And so from where do we actually get the idea of fear? Because I don't think it's innate in humans. Curiosity is a natural, response to difference, but very often, even if we intellectually have an idea around you know, race or difference of what it is, we can still have fear because it's something we don't understand and it acts differently. So I feel very grateful for that. And, obviously gazillion cultures I don't know, but there is a knowing in me that beneath that cultural layer, we're the same. It sounds so obvious, but I have noticed in life that it has made me show up in different ways because it's just is.
Yes, that's right, that's right. Well, and again, because you had it such a young age, it's just, like, probably unconsciously formed the way you think, I'm assuming, and like you said, the older you got, you probably were able to reflect back on that and see the value and see how it impacted you. Okay, so you had this time in Africa, that was formative, but then you grew up in Sweden and then yeah.
Yeah, then I was back in Sweden, and then I'm definitely of the sort of explorer, curious type. So after high school, I decided to move to France and both study but also work a little bit, learned fluent French and got that experience. And then I did my university degree. I have a master's degree in science of IT engineering. So a lot of math and physics and electromagnetics and whatnot and programming. And, then I did my first project, in Spain, which I think I almost overdid it there because, well, they had and this was, in the early 2000s, they had a very interesting, usability lab, and, I wanted to do a project there, and I got that through the university, where I had my degree from, and, but I also had to learn Spanish.
Right.
Only was it a very challenging project, where I, developed, a 3D programming language, so a little ahead of Web3 in 2003, 2004, but also just to communicate with other people in that lab, etcetera, was, yeah, it was definitely a lot of piled up challenges, and I learned a lot from that too, and I actually that was probably an experience where this was, in Madrid, and I think we should remember as well that Madrid is or like Spain has opened up a lot over the last few years. When I was there, the grandparent generation had still lived under a dictator. And the parent generation had often never been abroad. So it was actually, a very monoform, culture. I was seen as very different, and a foreigner, and I think the appreciation I got there was from not also having support and how to figure things out, where to find, the whole immigration part, which can be very humbling. So I think I got a lot of appreciation in that experience actually of what it's like to immigrate.
Yes, right. Maybe your experience in Spain, really is a snapshot of what how many difficulties, you can face as an immigrant entrepreneur, which is very different than someone a tourist. I mean, I know that's obvious, but you know what I mean, right? I mean, just to point out the obvious, right? It's like, you're there to actually work alongside people who are, who live there, right? But anyway, but language, papers, a setup in terms of how it is that you work together even, I assume, right? Norms around work. So a lot of things so it sounds like that was a snapshot of, like, the challenges that you can face, but then you kept going. You went to maybe a couple of other countries. So, yeah, say a little bit more about what came next.
Yeah, so, after that, I moved to London, and I was there for 16 years, so that is really the big chunk of my career. I started at Lucent Technologies, worked with sort of mobile backend infrastructure, and then from there moved into the emerging mobile kind of experience landscape with mobile marketing and all of that, and this is before the iPhone, where no one thought that that was gonna happen. There were very small budgets. No company was taking mobile seriously because we didn't think or they didn't think that people were gonna wanna do anything on such a small screen. And little did we know it feels like I should be 400 years old,
Yeah, right.
like
It really does, doesn't it?
society today, and like, how is it possible that I grew up without technology and that, in my career, no one thought that mobile was gonna be a thing.
Isn't that crazy? And you're definitely not 400 years old. But you're right. I mean, that is incredible to even, like, as you were saying it out loud, I feel like we were both like, "Oh my gosh, like, that wasn't that long ago," but it seems like it was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The speed of change in our lifetime is just, incredible. Um, so yeah, got to do a lot of very exciting pioneering, technology, in London, during my time there. Also got to be a CEO again and such. And it's interesting. France, Spain, the UK. There's different nuances of culture. You hit different types of glass ceilings or different hurdles. But yeah, I had a fantastic time. London is such a multicultural, amazing city, especially if you're young and have a lot of energy. So, and then from there, so I met actually Stefan, my current co-founder, in London, and was just very interested in what he was doing, and did not intend at all to co-found a company with him at any point. I became blown away by the product and the efficacy. It was great that we got a chance to get to know each other. So when I took the co-founder role, I'd already been a board director for a while and advisor before that. But I had no idea how effective and the type of retention this product would have, which I hadn't seen anything like it. And so from there, I ended up, doing this with all of my life right now, like all my time.
But then why the US? Like, where did the US come in?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like, knowing that I was gonna speak with you, I've kind of thought a lot about, these decisions and, the decisions around where to live, I think have to really be the bigger mind and the intuition and just following what's happening. And for me, London was just like, I'm moving to London. I don't know why, but I'm moving to London. And it was so formative to me and really expanded my potential. And LA was not on my radar. I have worked in tech most of my career. I expected if I was going to move to the US, it would be to San Francisco. And we just got interest from investors in California. Uh, the US became our largest market, and I realized, this is where this product is going to grow, and I need to get this out there. This is so mission driven for me. This product is so needed by so many people, and I just feel like I need to do what it takes. And as it happened, like it really worked out in my personal life at the same time. So it was just one of these things where first I was kind of traveling back and forth, and then all of a sudden everything just worked out.
Wow.
That's how I ended up here. And in the end, Los Angeles has a now thriving tech scene, which has really grown over the last 10 years or so, and VC scene. And then, this is where yoga started, all the wellness.
Yeah, right, I know, it seems like such a good fit.
Yeah, and then all this storytelling, around consumer brands. So in hindsight, maybe I should have thought I should go to LA, but that wasn't actually how it happened.
Well, I mean, in some ways, I almost feel like the experiences that you had in moving and going and being in so many different places actually honed your instincts and those intuitive, impulses, to kind of I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but it seems like it. You were just kind of really in tune and listening and just like, but it also sounds like you did some nice you know, you were dipping your toes in a lot of places, right? At the same time, with maybe without even maybe realizing it, along the way.
I think, it's definitely a perspective that the world is your oyster. I have traveled around the world twice, and so the openness was there for sure. So just like listening to where is there interest, where is there demand, I think that is definitely an aspect, and sort of, I guess, a lack of fear, and a openness to possibilities of moving really far for the company, because not everyone necessarily has that. But yeah, I try to be more in tune. But I have a quite strong rational mind as well, so
It sounds like it. I just think that captures so much this whole idea of openness to the possibilities, right? Because I think that, on so many levels of our lives, whether you're just any person but especially a leader, there's so many barriers that we have in our minds around what we can or should do that and we don't even realize that they're there sometimes. They're just like, there and it's like we haven't even thought through getting through them. But again, I think that relates back to your formative experiences and just like as you said, you just there was something in you that assumed the world was your oyster, right? And that the possibilities were in a lot of different places and that was and you're going to see where things could go.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah. Without maybe going too deep on this, there's a lot happening in our country, in the US here around immigration, especially in LA. And I'm just kind of curious from your own experience navigating, starting this company, being in this company, being an immigrant entrepreneur. What has your experience been like? What have you learned? Generally, but also maybe as it relates to kind of, universal leadership kinds of learnings that anyone could be helped from.
well, of course, I mean, this amazing country is built on immigration, right? So I think, and it's one of the things that I think has made America, or the USA, a leader. People want to come here, some of the smartest minds, and so, that's definitely a treasure. Yeah, immigration is humbling, and it's one thing I think when you get moved by a company and they do all the paperwork for you and all of that. Because the company was really small when I moved here, I've done everything myself, and I've cried a couple of times out of frustration. And then I do feel like, I mean, first of all, I'm white. I wanna recognize that. I speak several languages. I am pretty fluent in English. I have, a university degree, and I'm technical, and I still struggle with some of the systems, and, it just
So important to point out all those advantages that you have and yet, right?
Yeah, so all these different applications and things where you have to go to an office and you actually had to print the papers that were already approved and, just and then they send you back. I mean, it's just like a lot of things like that where, you know, um, bless everyone who works for all the institutions and, they're typically not very well paid and stressful jobs and whatnot, but the experience on the other side is hard. Like I'm not used to being treated in a certain way or spoken to in a certain way. So and that so it's definitely an experience, but there's bureaucracy in every country. So, I think there's no perfect place to point to, and of course, we can't just in the current state of affairs, we can't just have open borders, right? Um, yeah. So it's just the reality of things, and I mean, for me, I have also the experience of immigrating, so I tend to really think about and know about myself what I need to be fulfilled. And so the things just rocking up and you've lived in a town where you just had friends. No, you need to make an effort to make friends. You need to find the type of people that you will resonate with. And so I almost have a process in terms of signing up to an organization where I find people that are interested in XYZ. I'm interested in wellness. I go to certain events, and then you need to be proactive and reach back out and keep contact and whatnot. I'm in a relationship, so I have uh, you know support, around me. But yeah, I think it's we really need to appreciate the emotional effort as well of leaving everything that makes you confident. And, if you remove everything the language you speak, the culture the network you have, it's an extremely vulnerable position and to build all of that up. So I do think that the level of adaptability and self-awareness and grit and resilience and humility that is required to immigrate is it's not to be underestimated.
That's right. Yeah. And it's gosh, there's so much that you said there that's so valuable, because everything that you've been learning along the way contributed to how you became a person that could get comfortable. Like I just love that you have like like it's almost like a process. You're not waiting for things to happen and waiting for like things just naturally to like get comfortable or, get to the point that you feel like you belong. It's like, no, I know that I have to work at this. So what do I need to do to make that happen? And you just now have which again, I think you're right. I think that it probably helped you a lot because you've done it multiple times. And so you kind of know what to do. So I think that's really valuable. And I think it's valid and I think that can be used in a lot of different ways for people to realize, that when you get to the point where you're feeling like, what do I need to do to feel grounded and comfortable here, whether it's a new job, right, or a new country, or a new role, what work do I need to do to get there, right? I'm not just waiting around for that. When you think about yourself, and I assume that you also have plenty of colleagues or other people that that are also immigrant entrepreneurs or immigrant leaders, how do all these things that we've been talking about and describing, make you a better leader? Or make you a unique leader? Or what are the unique aspects, right, of using all those life experiences, into leadership?
Mm. Yeah, I think firstly, um, well, I don't know where to start. Let's start with talent. I think that one of the most important things is obviously to hire and attract talent and keep a team. And I think that if we have a very narrow frame of how we expect people to speak, problem solve, act, respond, all of that, then we miss out potentially on talent. And we know that very well that a lot of people hire people that are like them. And so when we've lived in different countries and have a much wider perspective, then we see those things differently. So, if someone like, there's certain countries that are much more direct. Now, if we have a very narrow frame, that would be like, "Oh, this person is rude." Or if someone isn't being explicit, you're not taking them seriously, instead of just like, "Oh, it's just culture." And so the ability to see below that and realize like, no, this person and I've had sometimes teams that have been very diverse and really gelled because there is an acceptance of people being who they are. Like, yeah, you can be you and work that way, and we get it. So I think that's probably one part of it. The adaptability and flexibility and this sensitivity that you said, I think is very important because that is also markets change, environments change, consumer behaviors change. So this ability to kind of, oh, immediately notice something and kind of, oh, we need to look at this or adopt to this or explore this, I think, is another part that comes with that. And the adaptability is great. Just to sort of put myself on the spot a little bit, I think one of the things I'm like sort of in process of now is I've been here for long enough to like, okay, I adopted. Like, it's great. Like I feel at home. I Yeah, I really feel at home, like, all, on so many different aspects. I get the people, I get the culture, and then it's kind of like just a little readjustment to being me. So I think that there's first almost like a mirroring process where it is like, internalizing, integrating how to be effective in communication. And, that means not me coming here being completely showing up the way I would in Sweden, because it would be interpreted differently, and I think that's a gift. I don't think that's a bad thing. But then it gets to a point where I'm like, "Okay, great, check, I got it, they get me, we can communicate, all is good." And then there's a little aspect of essence coming back in. Okay, so in this context, how can I now be a little bit more myself? And so that is something I'm just very fascinated even observing myself and how I navigate these things. And so I think there's a little bit of that. And yeah, I look at even just my wardrobe from having lived in London. It's a very London wardrobe, right? So even things like that where you work, okay, now I live in LA, very different style. It's like, okay, where in the middle of all of this is what's truly me? So it's just interesting because I think from we learn so much about not just other cultures, but a lot about ourselves from moving. Is that where it's good tested? Certain things we just believe, but is it our core belief because of what? Our family, our culture, or we never even questioned it, and we moved to a place where things are perceived differently. And I've not lived in countries that I would say are gen that culturally different. I haven't lived in Mongolia or, just like a lot of places I could have lived that would have been very, very different. But we even things like the news is told differently. History is told differently. This origin stories of humanity are told different. So it's just kind of when we break, like, oh, none of that is taken for granted. Oh, okay, then you're forced to form your own understanding of the world, and I think that's just something really interesting.
Oh my gosh, there's so much I wanna unpack here. This is so good. Actually, just on a total side note, my middle daughter just graduated from high school, and she's spending her freshman year in London. So it's like I keep thinking about everything that you're saying. I mean, not just about London, but generally speaking, right? The learning that comes from that. But, let's see. So I love what you were saying about this whole idea of, like, going to a different country and mirroring what you see and these are all my words, so you tell me if this resonates with you, but you're mirroring what you're seeing because you are adapting and you're trying, I don't know if this is the right word, but, like, you're trying to fit in. You're trying to figure out where is my place here and how do I adapt to this new culture. But then once it's safe, and you never said the word safe, but it's like almost there's like a safety component here where it's like you were saying, they know me, I know them, like I feel comfortable. And so now I can kind of like figure out what's truly me. And so to be truly yourself, you have to feel some sort of sense of safety. Even if you have been mirroring and trying to adjust and accommodate to the culture, which doesn't have to be bad. But then there is a moment of like, well, what's really me?
Yeah.
So I love that. And anyway, I think that whole idea of safety is really important. And then I kind of want to go back to I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about talent because I think a lot about that when I'm working with executives. And one of the things that I feel like I've always noticed is that if you have a team that are more homogeneous, whether it's in terms of personality or the culture that they're from or how they think or their background education, it's easier for them to work together, but there's not as much innovation and not as much, cutting edge ideas that come out of it. If you have the opposite where you've got a lot of diversity within the group within the team, it's harder to work together, especially maybe initially, but there's more innovation and cutting edge kinds of thinking that can come out of that. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely, both on a personal level, but I think there's been quite a lot of studies on that topic as well, and for that to be true. But like I can go a little deeper on that topic as well, because I think even just the aspect, it's something that I kind of really try to talk about right now, which is we've really been striving to get comfortable in so many different ways, just in how we've engineered, you know, driving instead of walking. But it doesn't make us healthier. It doesn't make us happier. And it's, like, really something very fundamental in life, which is you can't build a muscle without resistance. The friction and resistance in life is by design. It's literally what makes us better. And I've been just curious. I've been looking at a few, of these sort of I find it fascinating to look at kind of oppressed of, religions and such because like when very often the ones that kind of succeed are they good at controlling the masses. And so if you look at, for example, Sufism or Kabbalah, um, there are many, even Kundalini to some extent is this internal power. It's not an external power. But then there's something in common as well, which is just this thing that the brokenness or the pain or the friction or the challenges are really the gifts. If we didn't have the challenges and so we can challenge ourselves or we can get challenged by life. And so I think that there is this aspect of actually challenging ourselves is really a very interesting part. And I was just in San Francisco last week and had a lot of conversations on these topics and also why why do we choose the entrepreneurial journey? Um, I'm just reading, Soul Venture, and I actually met Ashwin, in San Francisco, and, like, what is it that makes us go and start a company when almost all fail? And it's ridden with challenges and
Like the numbers don't look good. So it's like, what are we doing here?
not rational at all. And I think that, the same thing in many ways, in starting a company or moving to another country, you expose yourself to challenges. And if you have a growth mindset, it's hugely expansive. I've really grown as a person, as a, I don't yeah, leader if you like, but more importantly, a good leader is a good human. And by facing the challenges and understanding how I can act better in these, I think I'm constantly evolving. And then nothing is lost. Because ultimately, if the main goal is me being a better soul, me being a better human on the planet, then the company is also, growing and helping a lot of people. But I do think that that is a really important truth. And I 100% believe in that. And if we tie back to teams, yes, it is a little bit more effort, but it's an effort. What is it for? I mean, the team is not there to be comfortable. The team is not there to do nothing. The team is there to drive an energy forward, drive a company forward, drive innovation. And therefore, those different perspectives, different views, coming together is just what's needed to enable great innovation.
Yeah, you said an incredible amount of things, and the idea of the whole person being, being a good leader is just really about being a great person. Like the ultimate goal is to be a great person, a great soul, as you said, and hopefully, that makes you a better leader. I mean, they go hand. It's like, how can we separate those, right? It's silly that we even think to separate them, right?
Self-awareness, I would say, especially.
Self-awareness, exactly. That's right, that's right. This is such a weird question, but I am kinda curious, and I know, and I assume, obviously spending a lot of time in California. I assume that you've spent other time and done interacted with people from other parts of the country. Do you think that there's anything, unique o or anything that you notice about American culture in particular as it relates to this idea of friction, and either, um, friction for the sake of friction, right, versus, like, friction to make better, or avoiding friction unnecessarily?
Wow, where do we go? I mean, it is obviously a masterpiece, just a creation of American culture because it was such a divergent group. And so, this creation of a unique identity and the storytelling of the United States of America, could be studied for years and years because really people came together under one flag and one set of values that really came from all over and had different values and so on. So, there is, and obviously, Europe is many different countries, but it's incomparable. Like this, homogeneous, it's much more homogeneous, in the US than, not that you can compare it, with Europe. So, and, I think, as Swedes, we're quite direct, and English are less direct.
Uh-huh, yep.
America's kind of somewhere in between, but it's often just a way of how you say things
Yeah, sure, right, good point, and how you interpret
and
what
how you
someone
interpret
said, yes.
those sayings. But yeah, no, I think it's a very deep, topic, and, right now, obviously, we're seeing more friction, and I think my view is that it's actually not really the American people. There's a lot of agendas, and, you know, power has this is nothing new. I mean, like, the same tools that were used by the Romans and, colonizers and whatnot. And so, I think, just recognizing and not forgetting that, I genuinely think that the American people are not at all as fractured as it might be perceived, and, that we need to be very aware of the storytelling. There's a lot of storytelling, and, what is the story that's being told right now? And I think that is also having that self-awareness and having seen different countries' storytelling, I don't buy it as easily. There is a questioning and I was, for example, I was in Madrid when the bombings happened, and the government at the time, obviously Western, democratic country, um, needed to not reveal that it was related to the war in Iraq, and therefore said that it was the ETA separatist organization that was behind it, and it turned out to be a lie. And to be in the country with all the main publications and all the authority sources of information, I realized, oh, this is like I can't just take for granted that the main newspapers and the government and the main news channels in a democratic country are telling me the truth because there is also an agenda, right? So for that reason, I think, and everything from, African countries to Sweden and everything in between. So I think that it also gives kind of perspective and seeing through some of the storytelling, and scrutinizing that in a different way. But I always go back to we are all the same, and we can always find a common denominator to connect with each other. think that's kind of what I want to hold on to, and I try not to integrate too much of the sort of separating.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's an interesting thing, topic right now, and even like let's even take politics and media, or and journalism or media. Let's even take that out of it. I'm just thinking like day to day, people at work working together, thinking through problems, thinking through what the problem is, thinking about what the potential solutions are, and how do you show up so that you have a culture that feels grounded and balanced between, not, again, not having conflict or tension for the sake of tension, and also not, you know, uh, running away from it. And I think that there's this healthy sort of balance between, as you were saying earlier, tension can, bring about a better good and a better solution. And so anyway, I guess I was just thinking a lot about that as you were speaking and how culture can drive that. And again, culture being country culture or culture of a company. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that.
It is really tough, to sort of compare, but, like, on a general level, it almost becomes easier when you have a more different team, and I think it's important that you have one person. Like, that's the hardest is to be, a very homogeneous team with one person that kind of acts and thinks differently. And when everyone is kind of acting and thinking differently, then again, it's almost the same thing, but on a small level, then you kind of have to remove your filters. And all of a sudden, like, okay, so you just get used to this kind of different ways of interacting. And once you've worked with people that are quite direct for a bit, you realize they're nice people. Like, and then it's just like, "Oh, I don't have to take offense? It was just feedback." Like, "Yeah, it was feedback because they care about you." Like, "Oh, okay." So, it changes, and so, again, I think that's helpful versus if this very code of conduct, you can only speak in this way, and we don't really tell each other, and, things go quite far out. Obviously, there's some I'm really interested in, teal style organizations, and there are certain organizations, that go really full out where everything is public information. All the feedback is straight to the person. And, we need to find our organizations where at least we feel safe, right? Because it's type of feedback is not for everyone. I mean, if you've grown up and you get personally triggered by being in those environments and we activate the stress response, we're not going to receive the feedback. We're going to act defensively. And, so that's both, for, whoever leading the team, understanding the dynamics of the team, noticing if someone is unable to really be grounded in that kind of process. Overall, I think it's on a company culture team level. There are some quite extreme teams that are happy with that, and then others where, the tone need to be softer and things delivered in a different way. But the growth mindset and I think also from, leading teams, we're not there to be liked. That's not our job. And I think one thing that I often say is that the result of feedback is not in the response of the person in that moment. And that comes to having a different conversation with a partner or a friend. You might say something to them and they blow up in your face, but a month after, they've taken action.
Yes.
Then you were
Those seeds were
successful.
planted. That's right.
Yeah, so remove your ego from these conversations. And if like, for me, it's like tuning in with, is this coming from a place of love? If it's coming from something I need to say to because I want to feel right about something, then no. But if it's just like, this is going to be a really uncomfortable conversation, but this is a real blocker for this person. That person might not receive it well in the moment, but very often you will see the behavioral change.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And I don't need to get thanked for that.
Yeah, right. Good point. Which is what's make leadership hard is because you don't need to be thanked, and you should live with that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I keep thinking about as you're talking is when I think of leaders and I think about leaders, especially in founders who are creating an intentional culture, because they should be, right? I mean, whatever company you have, it has a culture. Is that culture working for you? You have to ask yourself that. And if it isn't, what do you need to do to create the culture that's going to work? And I guess, as an entrepreneur, who's an immigrant that's worked and lived in different cultures, how do you think about creating culture, within Sensei or any other place?
I have so much ambition about this, and then you're in a startup and you have no resources and no time, and I'm spending most of my time fundraising and,
Right, exactly. All that goes out the window suddenly, right?
not even talking about it, right? But I mean, like, one thing that is intrinsically, culture building is working on yourself. And I think everyone knows that I do. And so just the fact that, it's one thing if you're just giving other people feedback. I am giving myself the most, in terms of constantly how, looking at myself. And so, that is just one part of it. And I do think that how we show up is so much more important than anything else we do. We have done for sure. Deep workshops on what our values are and really try to integrate them and refer back to them and use that framework not as posters but as decision making, like, okay, we are, for example, like collaboration over competition. Well, what does that mean in this? How? And like transparency, okay, well, what does this mean here? So it's important, and obviously this is done with the team, so that we all integrate this, and more importantly, how we then work those values into our communication, our internal and external engagements, our decision making, etc. Um, and then definitely more than anything, how senior leadership show up. That is really how that culture really spreads in the organization, how we use that culture in the all hands. I mean, and it's having the awareness as well, of if we want the culture to be flat, for example, well then, for example, in our all hands, we make a lot of effort for people at all levels to present. It's not just, the team leaders that present, it's everyone, and just how we do breakout rooms and things like that. So it is not something that I would say I have a blueprint for. It is an area of exploration, but definitely an intentional area of exploration.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that honest answer. I mean, not that I expect any less, but no, I really do appreciate, the process and how you're thinking about it. I think that was really helpful. I know we're running out of time. I want to ask just one more question for someone who's listening right now that is an immigrant entrepreneur, or they are an entrepreneur, or they're an immigrant who maybe wants to just be at some company and do, great things that have an impact. What advice would you have for that person who's kind of making some of those transitions and thinking through some of those things?
I think this deliberate building of your environment is quite important. And it's kind of easy to just end up, or you meet someone that, I don't know, speak your language and become friends with them. But do they represent what you want? I've been more and more deliberate about this. For example, someone says, oh, I can introduce you to this person. It's like organizing late night parties. And I'm like, no, that's okay. It's no judgment, but where I'm at in my life right now, this stage of my life is actually not what I want. Or I can introduce you to this person that does this breathwork yoga retreats together with leadership. I'm like, yeah, introduce me to that person. So being deliberate and making sure that we build a network around us that kind of emphasize a little bit our essence. Because otherwise it's very easy to just kind of, oh, how did I end up over here?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Because, like, if we have that in our life, then going into the workplace and feeling at home in ourselves is so much easier. And just, to have a network of friends to ask about things and whatnot. Then I think, yes, finding companies that are a little bit more multicultural to start with or open in some shape or form makes it a lot easier. And it can be quite tough to end up in a culture that is very, very different, when we end up over compromising ourselves. And I've been in that environment early in my career when I was both in a new country and I was the only woman in the team. And I think I really overcompensated and wasn't really able to fully be myself. And so it's just being mindful of those things, but in general, just being deliberate about and act proactive about how we build our new life, I think is really important.
Well, and I feel like intentionality is really a theme, that we've talked about today, but also intentionality with like an eye on the future, right? Because what you just described is like not only who I am right now, but who do I want to be? And, building a network and building a place where I work and where I live that starts to get me there, even if I don't have all the answers, but it gets me there.
I want to add one more thing, which is everyone misses stuff from their home country or misses things, and it's like really important to be deliberate about what do I love about this country, what am I grateful for, because like you inevitably there's going to be things that aren't working the way we want or things that worked better wherever we were, and so also just kind of really reminding ourselves to be grateful in general. Again, this is just one area.
I love it. Anna, thank you so much. I feel like we could have talked a lot longer. I really appreciate your time again. It's just so lovely to talk to you. I just really have enjoyed our conversation. I can't wait for other people to hear it. How can people get in contact with you and your company and learn more about what you do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm Anna Gudmundson on LinkedIn. And then getsensate.com is Sensate, and my Sensate on social media in general. And that's SENSATE. And be delighted to hear from your listeners. And thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transformative Leadership Conversations. What I found most compelling about this conversation with Anna wasn't just her experience as an immigrant entrepreneur or the innovative work she's doing at Sensate. It was the way she thinks about leadership itself. And next week, we continue our theme of immigrant entrepreneurship with Arjita Sethi, a serial entrepreneur, educator, and founder of the New Founder School. Arjita shares her own journey from India to Silicon Valley and how she's building a movement to empower unconventional entrepreneurs around the world. I promise you, you won't want to miss this episode either. If you're ready to take your leadership to the next level or empower your teams for success, I'm here to help. Reach out to me directly at winnie@winifred.org or check out my website at www.winniedasilva.com to learn more about my work in coaching executives, developing critical leadership skills, and working with clients to build effective teams. You can also find me on Substack and LinkedIn. You are always welcome to take a seat at the table where every conversation has the potential for transformative change.